Welcome to the voice of Southern New England. Yes, that's WPRO. And yes, it's time for Service Matters, a weekly radio show that is broadcast on WPRO. And of course, we like to talk about the good things that happen in local communities. And we also like to talk about the good things that people do, certainly to make a difference, and in some cases, to make dreams real for folks out there that may be in need. You're listening to AM 630 and FM 99.7. We are indeed a Cumulus station, and you can catch us on the air every Saturday from 5 to 6 p.m. And Val, it's good that our closed match today because this is going to be televised. Our radio show is going to be televised at ECAT, Eastern Community Access Television. So let's go to our first guest, who happens to be the town administrator here in the town of Easton, Massachusetts. His name is Connor Reed. And of course, as you can see, he's a young guy with lots of energy and is well respected in the town of Easton, Massachusetts. Val, you and I have the opportunity to be here at the studio. We'd like to express our appreciation to the folks here at the ECAT studio on Oliver Street in Easton, Massachusetts. I'm talking about their executive director, Ken Pincus, and of course Howard Miller, who has a lot of expertise, does a lot of things behind the scenes, and we appreciate it. And Howard, I know, has a son that works at a radio TV station, a major TV station in the area, so we wish him nothing but the best. Our first guest, the town administrator, he's been here in the town of Sharon for 11 years.
Easton?
Easton. He started his responsibility in January of 2012, and he got his master's degree at Bridgewater State University, from what I understand. He also got his bachelor's degree at the University of Mass. And he's made a lot of terrific decisions here in the town of Easton, working closely with the Easton Select Board. Maybe we could start off, if you don't mind, telling our listening and viewing audience something about yourself, and what about the population here in the town of Easton? I know you're from Bristol County.
Sure. So first of all, thanks, Dave. It's great to be here with you, and in a slightly different capacity. We got to know each other through working on some infrastructure projects together. I want to start first by saying thank you as a dad of 2 young children. To be told I look like I have energy is a massive compliment, so thank you for that. So a little bit about me. As you noted, I'm kind of a proud product of public institutions, public education, public college, and where I received my graduate degree. And I'm kind of a believer that it's really important that people with energy and talent commit some, or in my case, all of that in their career to trying to make communities a good place, a safe place, and thriving places. And so I'm very fortunate to have been here for about 11 years now, and being able to put my efforts towards public service to try to continue making Easton a great place that it is for so many. You asked population, we're just over 25,000 as of the most recent decennial census, northernmost portion of Bristol County. We have access to Providence and Boston. It's a beautiful community with incredible architectural resources, as some at the table will speak to today, as well as open space, historical resources. Really excellent public school system that is about to complete a state-of-the-art pre-kindergarten through 2nd grade school, the Blanche A. Ames Elementary School, this fall, which is very exciting, and is also home to Borderland State Park and Stonehill College.
It's certainly a very special community. And Val, we have a second guest that joins us here in the studio. We're going to be talking to him later on about the Oaks Ames Memorial Hall. a very special facility in the town of Easton that needs some repairs, so we'll be talking about that. But I know that our town administrator has the enthusiasm and is very proud to work in a community like Easton, and that's the whole idea of our show here on WPRO, is to talk about the positive things, the good things, and why do people want to live in the town of Easton? That's a terrific question.
Sure.
That I'd like to ask you as a town administrator.
Sure. So one of my kind of many hats I'm responsible for wearing in this role is being sort of a brand ambassador for the community. And for me, I look at more numbers than I care to bore you with here, but I have to look at kind of how Easton is performing, right? How is our public safety doing? How are our schools doing compared to our neighbors? And over time, really, first as it being my profession and my obligation, working on these things and looking at how we were doing, and then on an individual level, to bring it back to education, right? So that's one of the reasons folks move to Easton. We have a great school system here. We have a proud tradition of supporting public education and excellence in public education. And I think that's a nice microcosm of looking at the way that the community here is also very engaged. We have hundreds of really active volunteers on boards and committees who care deeply about the community, who bring a ton of their knowledge and expertise to the table. I know you've served on municipal boards in your career, and it's my understanding, Val, you are a former municipal professional and elected official. So you know how important that is, to have an engaged community of people who want to give their time and efforts to give back to a place they love. And getting to see that firsthand on the school building project, these projects take years and years and years, and although this one's moved quite well, when that project began, my daughters had not been born yet, and I got to see that design process from a kind of younger, I guess more technical perspective, and getting to see the level of enthusiasm and appreciation that educators and architects put into a project like this, down to the smallest details. Thinking about universal design elements so that all the kids of the school can get to the second floor and get to a studio, actually, together. Thinking about the scale so that our kids feel comfortable in these buildings, and seeing how much care went into it was super inspiring. And as my wife and I began to grow our family and make decisions about where we wanted to raise that family, we picked Easton ourselves. And so I think I can't think of a better endorsement from someone doing my job, who's worked here, both outside the community and now in it, for more than a decade, than to look at that kind of proud tradition of volunteerism, of folks in the community spending a lot of time and energy on things they care about, like the education system. So I think that's one major reason why people move to Easton. Another is that it is close enough to the city, whether you're going to Providence or Boston, but not so close that you feel that it's necessarily overly developed. There's a good mix, I think, particularly following kind of years and years of investment that we've made with infrastructure, where we have targeted neighborhoods that are denser and have more commercial growth, denser housing, and then there are more rural areas as well. So there's a good mixture of opportunity here for folks, and great education, and just a good community.
I know in my neck of the woods, we had a new sewer system put in, and I'm really happy how that came out.
Sure.
And it was done very efficiently and effectively. And I know that you come from the East Providence, Rhode Island area,
Mm-hmm.
and you know how important it is to have town officials that step up to the plate and do what has to be done.
Certainly do.
I know you have some questions, Val.
Yes, how long have you been I'm sorry, I know how long you've been town administrator. Have you been town administrator anywhere else? Have you done that? This
I
is
have
your
not.
first?
It is my first community I've been a town administrator in.
Okay.
Yes.
When I came in, I was a little taken aback when I met you at your youth, because I've served with, I was the administrative assistant, as I told you,
Sure.
to the city manager for a few years. But over the years, I've seen quite a few city managers. That's why our city change to the mayor form of government because they kept rotating all the time. And the first one that hired me, he was 36 years old, and
Sure.
after that, they were all old men. So
I appreciate
it's nice
that.
to see someone young.
You know, it's interesting. There's a real challenge in this industry right now, and I'm sure you could speak to this too, that there was a period of time in the 80s and 90s, wasn't doing this job then, where it was not uncommon for there to be professionals in their 30s and early 40s doing these roles. And for one reason or another, a lot of those folks got in and I guess caught the bug and they stayed for many, many, many years. And so there wasn't a turnover, so to speak, and it's not as common to see somebody in their 30s, let's say, doing a role like this, although there are some. We are a very small group in Massachusetts, but that's changing. But this is the first town I've been town administrator in. I've been doing that for more than 5 years here, and now a third of my lifetime's been this career in Easton.
Do you consider the town of Easton to be very diversified?
Statistically, no. It is diversifying and it's moving in a positive direction, which is great. A lot of that is a reflection of the demographics of Massachusetts, but some of that too also relates to things like housing policy. And in the past decade, we have, through the select board and various boards and committees with support of voters, invested a lot in creating more opportunities for people to move here and creating more diverse housing options. Whether you are a young professional just starting out, or you are in your 40s raising a family, looking for a family-sized home, or your kids have gone through the school system and they're not kids anymore, they're adults and they've moved on, and you know, a 2,000 square foot family house doesn't make sense for you if you're 65 or 70. So we've worked really hard to create more housing and more opportunities, and so the town is diversifying, which is great to see. There's a lot of benefit there for everyone.
You know, it's impressive when you see some of the historical buildings in the town of Easton, and you see a very special state park, Borderland State Park, and then you have a college in the community, Stonehill College. Those are some reasons why people, and I met some folks who were just walking downtown Easton during the holidays, and they were so impressed at the lights and the flowers and the way the place looked downtown. And of course, you ought to be commended, you and the leadership here in the town of Easton, like the select board, for coming up and utilizing the services and the expertise of residents that live in the town to do what has to be done. We're going to come back. We're going to be taking a short break. Folks, you're listening to Service Matters. This is a show that talks about the good things, the positive things that happen in local communities. A big thank you to ECAT, Easton Community Access Television, for covering this radio show. And of course, this is WPRO. Hurry back. Welcome back to Service Matters. We're here at the Easton Community Access Television studio, broadcasting show WPRO, the voice of Southern New England. And of course, we have audiences out there from not just southeastern Massachusetts, but the entire state of Rhode Island, Connecticut. And we appreciate the folks out there that are listening. And it's about time, as someone told me, that we talk about good things that are happening in local communities. Val and I today decided that we would do the show here in Easton, Massachusetts. And as a result, their local cable access TV studio decided to cover the show. So we not only have a listening audience, but today we have a viewing audience. And we have with us the town administrator, Connor Reed, here from the town of Easton. We also have Fred Ames. And if you take a ride around the town of Easton, you're going to see the name Ames on lots of buildings. And we're going to get into that part of the show later on. But we appreciate both of you joining us today here in WPRO as well as ECAT. And I know that we talked about the diversity plans for the town of Easton and why people choose to live in a community like Easton. It's surrounded by Brockton, Mansfield, Sharon, and of course it's a community that the town administrator told us has about 25,000 people. Connor, you worked in the mental health area before you came to become a town administrator.
That's right.
Do you enjoy that more than what you did in the past, or at equal enjoyment working in both areas?
Well, so they're very different manifestations of service, but they're both focused around service, right? And so when I came out of college, I worked for a mental health care nonprofit, and so I worked out of group homes with, in my case, men who had various mental illness and co-occurring substance use disorder. And that work was fulfilling but incredibly challenging, and my educational background is in political science, not psychology. And so that wasn't necessarily the right fit for me, but I came away from that with a profound respect that I've always had, but certainly having worked in that environment for folks who work in health and human services and in the social services spheres. And just really humbling kind of ground level work with folks doing some kind of case management stuff, helping people try to get connected with employment resources, depending on where they're at. Some folks, you're trying to connect them with employment resources. Others, you're trying to just help them be independent and cook. So that was really rewarding in its own right, but not necessarily where my training was aligned. And so I got into this line of work, and I should probably not admit this, particularly in a room full of cameras, but by accident. I knew that I wanted to work in some capacity where you could be helping others, and so I typed the word advocate into monster.com. And my first job title, which was rather strange, which was citizen business advocate, popped up. And I said, well, that's a mouthful. Well, let's see what that is. And I clicked on it, and that first job for me that I applied for and was lucky enough to get a shot at was a position. I used to sit in the lobby of the town hall, and it was my job to know enough about what all the departments do, not enough to do their job, certainly, but just enough so that when somebody walked in the door and said, I want to open a business and I have no idea what to do, I could kind of function as a navigator through the process. And so doing that was a really good kind of getting thrown into the deep end on learning what a planning department does versus what public works and engineering do, and stormwater management or emergency response. And so that's how my career in local government started. So I'm very happy with my current career. Easton's been a wonderful community to work in. I've obviously had a lot of opportunity for career advancement, and a lot of really supportive mentors, both town administrators and the select board, particularly the current chair, Dottie. Just really great people and a lot of encouragement from the community, and yeah, it's been great.
I'm not going to ask you the question of who would you like to thank, because you have so many people that you work with that there's the fear of missing someone.
Sure.
But I am going to ask you, how does it feel as a town administrator to work in a town meeting atmosphere? I know that that's a little different. Some people have had different responses in different communities.
Sure.
What's your reaction to going with a town meeting?
So I'm going to give my reaction, but then I want to get Val's opinion as a city council form of government. So town meeting is really interesting because it's obviously a direct form of democracy where any registered voter can participate in the legislative process, but also call the executive branch to the mat, like this close to each other, which has some benefits and can also be challenging. But in Easton, the voters who participate in town meeting here are pretty sophisticated and reliable. Our town meetings are productive. We rarely go more than one night. Folks keep it on topic. It doesn't usually devolve into some of the less positive stories you see in the press in some areas. We're there, we know it's a business agenda. You're there to get the work of the people done. But it can be stressful when I try to explain my job to folks who are not in the public sphere, they say, wait, you spend 6 months a year crafting how many hundreds of millions of dollars worth of plans and going through all of these public meetings and all of these regulatory processes just to go to one meeting in one night, and you have no idea who's going to be there. And if they don't like what you say, it fails, and that's it. And yep, that's it. So it creates a rhythm for the office, right? We have 2 town meetings a year, and you kind of back everything out from there, and you better get it right.
And how do you feel, Val,
No.
about the city council?
Well, we
form of
don't have,
government?
of course, we don't have town meetings. The whole process is a lot different. You know, you've got the mayor who'll come up with the budget, then give it that, but the city council is responsible for approving the budget, and you know that can get contentious at times too.
That's right.
But I had a question. Is your position appointed or elected?
I am appointed, so
You're
I'm
appointed.
a hired professional manager who is hired/appointed by an elected body, which is a 5-member select board.
By the select board?
Yes.
Okay.
I used to like town meeting because as a department head, I could present my case to the town meeting. Already been through the finance committee and supported by the board of selectmen. We now call it select board. But you could present your case to the town meeting people, and when you're in public parks and recreation, you see a lot of people during the course of the year involved in fun programs. So it's a little easier to sell it to the town meeting, I think. But you have different perspectives from different department heads. We're going to be talking later on the show, which is the next segment, with Fred Ames. And Fred is the president of the Oaks Ames Memorial Facility. And of course, it needs a lot of work, and it needs funds in order for it to work. And the town has been very supportive in previous town meetings to provide some funds for that. And I know that you're aware of that, Connor, and I'm assuming that you support that.
Yes, I mean, my role is to coordinate the efforts across the local government and have staff assigned to these different boards. In the case you're thinking is Community Preservation Act Committee. And that committee has worked very closely with Fred and the Oaks Ames Memorial Hall Association in the past to start coming up with some comprehensive plans to do some major and pretty exciting renovations for the facility that I won't steal Fred's bit. But the town has been very supportive to date, and I think it's really important that we make sure that we are continuing to preserve these wonderful historic and architectural resources, but also having them be vibrant and viable drivers to our downtown.
Before we take our next break, I thought maybe you could recognize the 5 members of the select board that work here in the town of Easton above and beyond the call of duty.
Sure. So we are chaired by Select Board Member Dottie Fulgenetti, Vice Chair Craig Barger, and then we have Mark Lamb, Jennifer Stacy, and Jamie Stebbins as members. I think that's a good note to make, and seems like a note for my segment to really thank all the citizens who volunteer, whether for elected office or on boards. An overwhelming amount of these are not paid positions. These people do go above and beyond. Many of them have careers and families that they're managing just like all of us, and then they take that extra step to get into public life, which is not always easy. So huge kudos to them.
Well, thank you very much. I know that all of us are in the helping people business, and I always like to say the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of helping others, and that's what these folks at this table do. Hurry back, folks. Short break. We have a lot more to talk about. Welcome back to another segment of Service Matters. Again, we like to talk about the good things that happen in local communities, and today we're in the town of Easton, Massachusetts. A radio show called Service Matters, and of course it's being televised on ECAT, Easton Community Access Television. We're going to give a big thank you to our town administrator, Connor Reed, who joined us today. And we're going to speak with Fred Ames. He's been on this station before talking about what he does with that facility. I'm amazed at how long he's been working at it. He has his name on the building, and of course, I tried to talk him into putting my name on it, but he wouldn't go along with that. But we appreciate Fred Ames joining us, and I would like to shake the town administrator's hand. Keep up the good work here in the town of Easton.
Thank you.
And you may want to join in our conversation as we interview Fred. Fred, give us, our listening audience and our viewing audience, a little bit about the history of that memorial facility.
Well, it was built in 1881, and the architect was H.H. Richardson, who also did Trinity Church in Copley Square in Boston, and was considered the preeminent architect of his time in the late 19th century. And of course, landscaping was Frederick Law Olmsted, who is recognized as also the foremost landscape architect of his time. In fact, he invented the profession. So, and there's also a very good partnership in the design of the hall, and it's noted of the work between the two men who were friends. And so it's a significant building. Also in history, Oaks Ames was one of the prime financiers of the Transcontinental Railroad, and a lot of that money obviously came from shovels in Easton, right here. So he is a significant figure in U.S. history. And the hall has really been used to its original intent. It was, I think in the last show I mentioned that it was to be a pedagogical extension of the Ames Free Library, which is memorialized Oakes's brother, Oliver. And we do a lot of social functions, all sorts of different events. We have meetings, we have interest groups, over the years, and it continues to do that. Initially, there were language classes for shovel workers who came over from Sweden and other countries. There were lectures, news of the day. This was before radio, TV. So it played a very sort of central role in the life of the citizens, which has now been, taken elsewhere. So what we're trying to do, one of our main focuses, working with the town, is to make it more of a cultural center. It is in the center of the historic district. It is an assembly. You can get assemble people there. 200 is a professional stage. So this is the really sort of the gemstone of the historic buildings, and for the purposes of the town and development, it's the leader. That is what can really bring people in. Performances, other such things.
And also weddings. You have weddings there, I understand.
Do we?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do. We got tons of
good
weddings,
fun-
and
good
believe me,
fundraising.
Ted, that pays the oil bills, and we continue to do that, and there certainly can be continue to do that also when there is an increased focus on cultural events. Theater, like to get community theater involved. Excuse me. We're starting to the very first stages of working with Stonehill College and their theatrical department. And again, we want to explore more links with the high school, with the school systems. So it's a pretty exciting project. It's a pretty expensive project, and I have, I'll put a number on it. I think it's 43 years that I've been with the hall. This is really what's happening now doesn't compare to any remotely to what's happened in the past. Connor and others are dedicated to this project. I've seen it in meetings. It's very encouraging because it's going to have a really big effect.
And I think that both Connor and myself agree that there should be additional parking for the functions that you have. That's part of the plan.
What was it, yesterday? Yeah, our meeting yesterday.
Yes,
We've got a good
review.
look at new parking plans.
And if I could, it's almost not. It's more of campus integration plans, right? I mean,
Well,
this is really
yes.
exciting, beautiful,
It-
plantings, and this isn't just asphalt. Right?
Well, that has always been my desire too.
Right.
And it makes an interior focus behind the buildings. And so it's another exciting step. I mean, this is really maximizing the value of these separate assets, which have never really been integrated in the way that we will with this of all things, a parking lot. But there's you wouldn't think so, but there's a slope down between the two
Yeah.
buildings,
Yeah.
which will be very nicely planted, walking paths. Oh,
You know,
just
it's
very,
interesting,
very well
Val,
done.
I know you're from the Providence, Rhode Island area, and they have lots of big buildings and historical, but in a small town like Easton, you don't expect it until you ride around the community and you see some of these buildings, gorgeous, and even Borderland State Park with the mansion. Now, they have their name Ames on that as well.
They do. So
Yeah.
is Stonehill College, so
Yeah.
is a number of other things in town. And I've spoken with a number of people who were attracted to the town because of the buildings, because of Borderland. And across the street is the estate I grew up on. And we sold that to the trustees of reservation. That's now a very popular destination. And what else? We're also going to sell to the trustees the site of the original shovel works, where all this started, the water-powered one. And there's Langwater Farm, which my family owns the land, and it's a tremendous piece of property. We could probably sell it for $6-7 million.
Fred, what is it you'd like to say to the your community out there in Easton? And certainly we're going to have a wide variety of people from all over southern New England that'll hear this. But you've got some major structural improvements that have to be made. There has to be some fundraising efforts put together. Is there anything you'd like to share with the audience?
Well, I guess my last sort of roll call of places there was, philanthropy is a great thing, and it's really made a difference wherever it comes from, and to urge people to give. I mean, the results can be quite impressive, and it's really the quality of life in Easton. So people notice when they come in, is the buildings, is the landscape, is the, Langwater Farm, which is now, so anyway, I would urge people, we have a GoFundMe site, and that is growing. That is one way they can easily connect. And in other ways, I don't know, send us a check. But I think probably what they should do is just contribute in their own communities to historic properties and buildings. But just give, and these are once these things are gone, it's a quality of life issue. And there's the education that Connor spoke about, but there's pretty good reasons why Easton is as good a town, as popular a town as it is, from the management of the town to the resources and the direction we're headed in. I think Easton is very good at planning ahead. I think remarkably so compared to other towns statewide. So it's a well-managed town.
And not all communities are fortunate enough to have a college in their backyard. And of course, it's very impressive over at Stonehill College. I had the honor of doing some games in the Northeast Conference basketball. And it's the spirit and the fact that the community comes together with the college, and I think that's absolutely terrific. We're talking with Fred Ames, who is the president of the Oaks Ames Memorial Hall here in the town of Easton, Massachusetts. And we also have with us the town administrator, who has been involved providing whatever advice and counsel he can. We're going to take another break. Dave Clifton here along with Valerie Perry. We are talking on WPRO, and of course waving to the people here that are viewing this on television here, Easton Community Access Television. Hurry back. Welcome back to the final segment of Service Matters here on WPRO, the voice of Southern New England. And of course, this broadcast is being televised by ECAT, Easton Community Access Television. Dave Clifton here along with Valerie Perry. And again, we'd like to express our appreciation to ECAT for televising this production. And I think it's so important for people out there in the Eastern community to know how lucky they are to have what they have and to live in a community like Easton, Massachusetts. And our guest, Fred Ames. Fred, I was going to ask you a question, but Val had one that she wanted to ask you first. Go ahead, Val.
You're saying that you need funds for the structure and for the building and all, and for the project.
Yes.
You need to
yes.
raise funds. Do you have any idea of how much you need to do that?
I would guesstimate it's probably 10 to 12 million.
Ooh.
So a substantial portion, we're very grateful to the town of Easton and the CPC, who will provide the bulk of it. But we do need additional funds. In fact, a case in point, we have a structural project now. And we've sort of, when you're redoing old buildings, you uncover things that you didn't know were there. So we will go over the town allotment, but we have also managed privately to raise money. So we will be able to complete the job even with the additional work we discovered. So that is a perfect example. Just because we get a significant amount of money from the town, it's probably not going to cover everything. And certainly we're not going to go back and ask the town for yet more when it's a record amount they've ever given, and they've put so much work into it. So yeah, no, we definitely don't be fooled by the big amount of the numbers we already have. We'll probably need some more contingency funds of maybe a couple of million.
Are there any grants that you can apply
there
for?
are a number of grants that we've applied to before and gotten money from. There are state agencies trying to explore more any sort of federal grants, but in the past week it's been difficult to get federal grants, and there are private donations. There's fundraisers we do. So there's a number of avenues, and certainly our GoFundMe site, on the internet, has been doing well. So I'm very pleased with that. Yeah.
Well, Fred, if you run short of funds and you need an extra 10 million, call Val, Val Perry, East Providence.
I'll call anybody.
Any final comment you'd like to make, or something you'd like to share with the audience? I know we're down to our final 5 minutes, and then we'll give you a chance, Connor, if you have some final comments you'd like to make. Go ahead, Fred.
Well, I think Easton, as Connor touched on, is really does benefit from the volunteerism and people going above and beyond. I think just to shout out to a friend of mine and someone who is very, very much committed to planning is Greg Strange. And he's a person who gives a lot of his time. He's not the only one. And I remember growing up, my father was always going out at nights to meetings, school committees, other such things. So it's had a history of that. Easton has had a history of citizen participation and involvement, concern, and foresight. Some good thinking has been going into managing this town. So that's what I'd like to end on. It's a great place. So.
Thank you so much for the good work that you do with your trustees. Keep up the good work. And folks out there in the Eastern community, do what you can to support this. This building is a building that you'd like to have for future generations. Town Administrator Connor Reed, anything that you'd like to say, a final comment to our listening and viewing audience?
Sure. So thanks, Dave, and keeping the spirit of public service. See a note there about the 300th anniversary, so I'll plug that. The Select Board recently charged a tricentennial committee, and we're soliciting volunteers. So anyone who is listening to this who might be saying, well, that all sounds nice, where do I even start with getting involved? We are soliciting volunteers for a number of boards and committees, but also the tricentennial committee for 2025, but that work's going to start now. As Fred had alluded to, we try to be pretty thoughtful with planning and getting ready to celebrate not just the incredible history of Easton and all the great things that we're coming from, but the great progress that we have made and we want to continue to try to make.
As a matter of fact, I had the honor and privilege of chairing the 250th anniversary in the town of Sharon, and I have a manual that I put together that I'd like to pass over to your committee, just so they can pick up some ideas
Absolutely.
that they might be interested in. Val, this has been a terrific show. We've certainly had a chance to hear about all the good things that are happening in the town of Easton. And one of the good things that is happening, it's called ECAT, Eastern Community Access Television. a chance for the community to communicate all the different meetings, and maybe there are senior adults or people that may have disabilities that can't make meetings. Thanks to ECAT, they're able to participate in the meetings. We'd like to thank Brett Ferruccio, producer back at the radio station. We'd like to also thank our two guests, Fred Ames and Connor Reed, our town administrator. We'd like to thank Tim Draper and Navacan Credit Union for their participation and sponsoring many of our shows at WPRO. We'd like to thank Kim Penkus, the Executive Director of ECAT, as well as Howard Miller on camera. We thank him for his expertise. And we say to people, you don't always get what you wish for, but you certainly get a lot what you work for. And I say that because a lot of good things happen as a result of hard work by volunteers. We're going to wrap the show up. We want to thank our listeners as well as our viewers. I'm Dave Clifton.
And I'm Valerie Perry.
Bidding you farewell from the ECAT studios in Eastern Massachusetts. We say to each and every one of you, go forth to serve, do it with a smile on your face. And if you're going to do something good to help someone out, do it with the dignity that it deserves. Go Patriots against Pittsburgh. Thank you. Have a good weekend.